What if everything you thought was lost forever suddenly came back into your life? Amy Fleming's world was forever changed when Ty, the love of her life, was taken from her. She spent years trying to move on, building a new life and learning to find happiness again. But what if one day she turns around and there he is, standing before her, alive? Could this be a second chance or a painful reminder of everything she's had to let go? Get ready for the heart-wrenching, suspense-filled return of Ty in Heartland Season 19. Ty makes his return. Amy Fleming had always believed that Ty was gone forever. The life they had built together, the dreams they shared, were all but memories now. Memories that she had learned to cherish, but had to let go of. The heartbreak of losing him had shaped every part of her, from the way she approached her work at Heartland to how she navigated her relationships with those she loved. Time had passed, and though the pain of his absence never truly faded, Amy had found a way to heal. She had her daughter Lindy, a beautiful girl who reminded her of the love she once had with Ty. She had her family, the ranch that was always her sanctuary, and she had Nathan, the man who had quietly entered her life during the darkest moments of her grief. Nathan had been the steady presence that Amy never expected but desperately needed. His support had helped her pick up the pieces of her life, and together they had formed a bond that grew stronger with every passing day. Nathan was not trying to replace Ty. He never could. But he had offered Amy something priceless: stability and companionship. He was there when Amy struggled with the challenges of raising Lindy alone, when she faced the overwhelming responsibility of running the ranch, and through every moment where she felt lost in the world. Nathan was her rock, her constant, and Amy was beginning to believe that perhaps this was the future she had to accept. But nothing could have prepared her for the moment she turned around and saw him standing there. Ty, alive, in the flesh. It was as if time had stopped. At first, Amy thought she was imagining things. Was she dreaming? Had her mind finally cracked under the weight of her grief? But no, he was really there. Her heart skipped a beat, and the flood of emotions that followed nearly knocked her off her feet. Relief, disbelief, anger, love, all collided inside her. Her body screamed at her to run to him, to touch him, to make sure he was real, but at the same time, she was frozen in place. Could this really be happening? Was this some cruel joke, or a second chance that she wasn't sure she was ready for? For Amy, everything she had worked for, the life she had built without Ty, suddenly seemed at risk of unraveling. She had spent years healing, finding peace in the little moments with Nathan, with Lindy, and with the ranch. Ty's return threatened all of that. Could she truly move forward, knowing that her first love had never truly been gone? Could she open her heart to him again, knowing that so much had changed in both of their lives? Ty's return didn't just shake Amy's world, it threatened to shake everything she had worked for. Lindy, who had grown up never knowing her father, would have to face the man she had only heard stories about. Would she be able to form a connection with Ty, or would the years apart be too much to bridge? And what about Nathan? Could he stand by while the woman he loved was torn between her past and her present? Amy's heart was caught between two worlds. Ty represented her past, her first love, the life she once imagined for herself. Nathan, on the other hand, was her present, her anchor in the storm, the man who had been there when she needed someone the most. But now, with Ty's return, Amy was left questioning everything she had believed. Could she ever move on, or had she only learned to live without him? The future of Heartland itself seemed to hang in the balance. For Amy, this wasn't just about love. It was about her family, her role on the ranch, and the legacy she was building. Could she truly let go of Ty, or would his return pull her back into a past she had spent years trying to escape? And what would that mean for Nathan, who had always known that a part of Amy's heart would forever belong to Ty? Would he step aside, allowing Amy the space to explore her feelings for Ty? Or would he fight for the life they had built together? As the days passed, Amy found herself at a crossroads. The love she still felt for Ty was undeniable, but so was the life she had built with Nathan. Both men held pieces of her heart, and Amy didn't know how to reconcile them. The emotional storm was overwhelming, and for the first time in a long time, she wasn't sure which path to take. Ty's return was nothing short of a seismic shift in the lives of everyone at Heartland. Amy had always believed that part of her heart would always belong to him. And as much as she had tried to move on, the bond they had shared was something that could never be erased. The love they had once fought for, the dreams they had built together, it was all still there, buried deep within her. But time had changed things. Ty had been gone for years. Those years weren't just filled with empty space. They had been filled with pain, growth, and healing. Amy had rebuilt her life, one small piece at a time with Nathan at her side. But now, Ty was back, and the question Amy couldn't escape was, could she pick up where they left off? Would she even want to? The years apart had been hard on them both, and Amy wasn't sure what had changed in Ty. What had he been through? Where had he been all this time? Could they truly find their way back to each other, or had too much time passed? Her mind raced with questions that didn't have answers. There was so much left unsaid, so much that had been lost and missed. For Ty, this wasn't just about returning to Amy. It wasn't just about rekindling a love that had been lost. He had missed years of her life, years of Lindy's childhood. Ty had been absent from all the small moments, the ones that had shaped Amy into the woman she was today, the ones that had made her a mother, a caretaker, and a partner. He had missed the days when Amy had learned to live without him, when she had found the strength to keep moving forward even though her heart had been broken. He had missed everything. Could he truly expect to step back into Amy's life and take up where they had left off? Could they just pick up the pieces and pretend that nothing had changed? Amy wasn't the only one struggling with Ty's return. Nathan found himself in a position he never imagined he would be in. He had always known deep down that Amy's heart would always have a part of Ty in it. Nathan had never tried to replace Ty, but over the years he had become a steady presence in Amy's life. He had been there when she needed someone to lean on, when she was broken and unsure of how to move forward. He had loved her through the toughest moments, through the grief, the pain, the doubts. He had given her the space to heal, and in return, they had built a life together, a life that felt safe, familiar, and steady. But now, with Ty's return, everything had changed. Nathan was caught in a whirlwind of emotions that mirrored Amy's own. He knew that Amy had a deep, irreplaceable love for Ty. He had accepted that reality long ago. But he also knew the depth of his own feelings for her. He loved her with all his heart, and the thought of losing her after everything they had been through together was more painful than he could bear. Nathan had never expected to be in this position, to be forced to compete for Amy's heart after everything they had shared, but he also knew that love wasn't about being possessive. It was about wanting the best for the other person. He would never stand in the way of Amy's happiness, but could he really let her go? Could he watch her walk away and let Ty back into her life without a fight? For Amy, the pull between the two men was becoming unbearable. Her heart was torn in two directions, and the weight of the decision was almost too much to bear. Ty represented the past, the love she had never truly let go of, the life she had once dreamed of having. But Nathan represented her present, her stability, and the life she had built from the ashes of her grief. The love she shared with Ty was intense, full of passion and youthful dreams. But the love she shared with Nathan was grounded in reality. It was built on trust, respect, and the quiet moments of everyday life. Which love was the one she was meant to hold on to? Then there was Lindy, Amy's daughter, who had grown up in a world without her father. Ty's return meant a huge shift for her as well. For years, she had only heard stories about him, seen photos, and wondered what it would be like to have a father around. Now, the man she had imagined was standing right in front of her. But would he be the father she had always dreamed of? Or would the years of absence create an insurmountable distance between them? Would she be able to accept him as part of her life? Or would it be too much too soon? Lindy's confusion mirrored Amy's own. She didn't know what to make of Ty's sudden return, and she struggled with her own feelings about Nathan, the man who had been a father figure to her for so many years. Could she still see Nathan as the father she had always known, or would Ty's return change everything? Her heart was caught between two men, just like Amy's was, and she too had to figure out what her family would look like now that Ty was back. As Amy spent more time with Ty, the old wounds began to reopen. There was a part of her that was still in love with him, still holding on to the hope that they could rebuild what they had lost. But there was also a part of her that had changed, that had grown stronger and more independent over the years. She had learned to live without Ty, And now she had to figure out if she could truly move forward with him in her life once again. Could she rebuild the life she had with him, or had enough time passed for them to truly be together again? And what about Nathan? Would she lose him in the process? Every day, Amy found herself sinking deeper into the emotional turmoil that Ty's return had created. The suspense of what would happen next was unbearable. Would she be able to make a choice, or would her heart remain divided forever? The answers weren't clear, and with every moment that passed, the stakes grew higher. As Amy grappled with the emotions swirling inside her, it became clear that her past and present were now colliding in ways she hadn't anticipated. The life she had worked so hard to build with Nathan seemed to be unraveling with every passing day. The quiet, stable existence she had come to cherish at Heartland now felt fragile. Every corner of the ranch seemed to hold a reminder of Ty, the place where they had once shared their dreams, the memories they had created together. With him back in her life, those memories became vivid once again, pulling Amy in 1,000 different directions. At first, Amy tried to deny the pull she still felt toward Ty. She wanted to move on, to embrace the life she had built with Nathan. After all, Nathan had been there when she had nothing left, when the pain of Ty's loss had been too much to bear. Nathan had given her a sense of security that Ty never could. He wasn't just someone who loved her. He was someone who had become part of her foundation, someone she could rely on without question. But Ty's return was like a storm, one that Amy couldn't ignore, no matter how hard she tried to focus on her future. Amy's emotions toward Ty were complicated. He had been her first love, her soulmate, and the person who had shared her dreams. Even after all the years apart, she hadn't fully let go of him. But that didn't mean she could simply walk away from everything she had built with Nathan. As she spent more time with Ty, she realized that he wasn't the same man she had loved years ago. Time had changed them both. Ty had been through his own struggles, his own battles, and he wasn't the person she remembered. The love they had once shared had been intense and passionate, but so much had happened since then. Could they ever get back to that place? Could they rekindle the spark that had once defined their relationship? But Amy's heart wasn't the only one in turmoil. Nathan, too, was struggling with the situation. He could see the effect Ty's return was having on Amy, and he knew that the love she once had for Ty was something that couldn't just be erased. He had never expected Amy to forget about him, but he had hoped that the life they had built together, raising Lindy, running Heartland, and supporting each other through the hardest times, would be enough to hold her heart. But now, with Ty back, Nathan was faced with the harsh reality that their relationship could be in jeopardy. He had always believed in Amy's strength, but this situation was testing even her. Nathan could feel the tension between them, and it was eating away at him. How could he compete with a ghost from Amy's past? How could he fight for her heart when it seemed like she was so deeply torn? Despite his own feelings, Nathan never wanted to be the man who stood in the way of Amy's happiness. If Ty was the one she truly wanted, Nathan would step aside. But that didn't make the thought of losing her any easier. The bond they shared, the life they had built together, meant everything to him. It wasn't just about love. It was about trust, respect, and the unwavering support they had given each other. Could he really let that go, even for Amy's happiness? As days passed, Amy found herself standing at a crossroads. The life she had created with Nathan felt solid, real, and safe. But the feelings she still had for Ty were undeniable. Her heart longed for the past, for the love that had once been so pure and untainted. Yet she also knew that Ty's return didn't just open old wounds, it complicated everything. The emotional bond between them had never fully disappeared, but there was a sense of guilt that clouded Amy's ability to think clearly. Was she being unfair to Nathan? Was she holding on to something that was no longer possible? Meanwhile, Ty was desperate to make things right. He had returned with the hope that he and Amy could rebuild their life together. He had been through so much, and all he wanted was a second chance, a chance to be the man Amy needed him to be. But Ty quickly realized that time hadn't stood still. Amy was no longer the same person he had known. She was stronger, more independent, and had grown into a woman who was capable of moving forward without him. He didn't expect everything to go back to the way it was, but he couldn't deny that the love between them still felt alive. He needed to find a way to prove to Amy that he was worthy of her heart again. The tension was palpable not just between Amy, Ty, and Nathan, but also within the whole family. The dynamic at Heartland was shifting, and everyone could feel it. Jack, Amy's father, watched with concern as his daughter faced a battle that seemed impossible to win. He had seen her go through so much, losing Ty, raising Lindy on her own, and finding love again with Nathan. Jack knew that Ty's return was going to be hard on Amy, but he also understood that she needed to make this decision for herself. He would be there for her no matter what, but he couldn't help but wonder, what if Ty's return was a blessing in disguise? What if it was a chance for Amy to finally close the door on the past and move forward for good? For Amy, the weight of all these emotions became too much to carry alone. She tried to lean on Nathan, but the space between them seemed to be growing wider each day. Nathan could see the struggle in her eyes, and though he wanted to comfort her, he wasn't sure how. Their once solid connection was now filled with uncertainty, and the fear of losing each other hung in the air. Every time Ty spoke to Amy, he reminded her of the life they had shared, the laughter, the dreams, the love. But with each conversation, Amy was also reminded of the years that had passed, the years that had shaped who she was now. Could she truly go back to that place? Could she step back into the past without sacrificing everything she had built in the present? As the days went by, the storm inside Amy only grew more intense. She was torn, unsure of which path to take. Should she hold on to the life she had with Nathan, the life that had brought her peace? Or should she take a leap of faith with Ty and risk everything for a second chance? Amy's heart was heavy with uncertainty, and the suspense of what would happen next felt unbearable. Would she make a choice, or would she be caught in this emotional storm forever? The more Amy tried to push aside the turmoil in her heart, the more it consumed her. Every conversation with Ty seemed to pull her back into the past, into the world they had once shared. But as much as she still cared for him, there was something inside her that told her not to rush. She couldn't let herself slip into old patterns. She had worked too hard to heal, to move forward. Ty's return was forcing her to confront everything she thought she had moved past. What was the right thing to do? The uncertainty was unbearable, and the weight of her decision felt like it was crushing her from the inside out. At times, Amy couldn't help but feel guilty. She had moved on with Nathan, and despite the emotional storms they had weathered, they had built a life together. Nathan had been her anchor. He had loved her without question, been there for her in her darkest moments, and had supported her in raising Lindy. He hadn't tried to replace Ty, but in many ways he had become the person Amy relied on. He had been the steady, unwavering presence in her life, and that kind of love was rare. Could she really throw that all away for the uncertain hope of rekindling something with Ty? The very idea seemed both tempting and terrifying. Despite the growing tension, Nathan remained patient. He understood the deep connection Amy had with Ty, and he knew that Amy would always feel conflicted in her heart. Nathan had never pressured her to choose between them, and he wasn't going to start now. He wanted what was best for her, even if it meant stepping aside. But as the days dragged on, he found it harder to watch Amy struggle, especially when he saw how much Ty's presence was affecting her. Nathan could see that Ty wasn't just a ghost from the past. He was a living, breathing reality. And every time Ty and Amy spoke, Nathan could see the spark between them that had never truly gone away. Nathan tried to focus on what he knew, the love he had for Amy and the life they had built together. But the emotional strain was taking a toll. He was starting to question his place in Amy's life. Was he just the man who had been there when she needed someone? Was he just the stable, reliable figure who had filled the void Ty had left behind? Nathan's insecurities grew, and while he tried to hide them, they were eating away at him. Could he ever truly compete with a love as deep and intense as the one Ty and Amy had shared? Meanwhile, Ty too struggled with his own demons. He had spent years away from Amy, years trying to figure out who he was without her. His return had been a desperate attempt to reclaim what he had lost. But Ty wasn't the same person who had left Heartland all those years ago. He had been through pain, loss, and a journey of self-discovery. He knew he couldn't simply pick up where they left off. Things weren't that simple. Ty had to rebuild trust, rebuild the bond they had once shared. But most importantly, he had to prove to Amy that he was worthy of a second chance. His love for her had never died, but he was painfully aware that the time he had missed had shaped Amy in ways he couldn't have anticipated. Could they really start over, or had too much time passed for them to rebuild what they had once lost? The constant emotional tug-of-war left Amy exhausted. She couldn't escape the thoughts swirling in her mind. Should she take a leap of faith with Ty, risking everything she had with Nathan? Or should she stand by the man who had been there for her, who had never left her side, even when the world seemed to fall apart around them? She knew that no matter which decision she made, someone would get hurt. And it wasn't just her heart that was at stake. It was Lindy's, too. Lindy had spent her entire life without a father. And now Ty was back. The idea of having him in her life was both exciting and confusing for her. Could she ever truly connect with him? Was he the father she had imagined in her dreams? Or was he a stranger who could never fill the role she had always needed? The bond between mother and daughter was always at the heart of Amy's struggles, and now that bond was being tested. Lindy had always seen Nathan as the father figure in her life. He had been there for her through everything. But now, with Ty's return, the delicate balance between the three of them was shifting, and it was unclear how it would play out. Amy didn't know if Lindy would accept Ty in the way she had accepted Nathan. Could she accept the man who had been absent for so many years? Or would the years apart be too difficult to bridge? Despite her heart being torn between two men, Amy couldn't ignore the reality of what was happening.